The Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, kicking off the week with some Arnold Palmer Invitational DraftKings picks and preview if you were looking for the show with myself and Jeff Feinberg. It's on delay till Tuesday, and then he'll be back in studio. His flight was delayed, and if I'm feeling any good way from the weekend, I know he's probably feeling a lot worse. But if you out there want to get into a draw for $100 DraftKings dollars, subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast, leave a 5-star review, DraftKings handle, and something you enjoy about the show, and you'll be in that draw. If you want to get into the draw for $20 DraftKings dollars, smash the like button for the video, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section of the video, and tell me, if you were to play one player at 100% of your lineups this week, which player would that be at their pricing? Because there's some attractive options that are somewhat cheap. We got some winners from last week. If I can find them, I'm sure they're on here somewhere. We'll give those away. Plus, we got some giant shout-outs to do before we bring... Actually, well, let's bring in right now. From Rick Run Good, or at Rick Run Good, at www.dfsondemand.com. My roommate for the week at the DFS Open, Rick Gehman. What's up?
Hey, Pat. Long time no see.
Yeah. How was your trip home?
Uneventful. I mean, it's long going back across the country, but very uneventful. Got home basically right on time. But yeah, it was man, I got some much needed sleep last night.
Yeah, I think I slept 12 to 14 hours after I came back home, and I woke up on Monday morning, took my son to daycare, was feeling all right for like 20 minutes after I got home. I was like, I think I need to go back to bed and like grab some more sleep. I still feel hungover, and like that's not good news for me.
Yeah, we're getting old, man. I feel like if I was 5 or 10 years younger, this wouldn't even be a blip on the radar. But yeah, I'm on the struggle bus today.
Yeah, the whole consecutive days of drinking turns out I can't do it anymore. My body is not equipped for that. That's one good thing. My wife went through pregnancy, and then we had the young child. We don't really drink all that much anymore. So that's good for my day-to-day life. My tolerance is not great. But here are the winners. The $100 DK dollar winners from last week. I gave away 2. 1, Phil 7, and Tully 936, the winners of $100 DraftKings dollars. $20 winners, Kill Switch 80, Silly Hats, Debt Money, West the Best 26, and T-Bows are all the winners of the DK giveaways. And here's the big thing, Rick. We had a lot of winners on the weekend. Both you and I hit Sung Jae. That was nice. Sneakily, I don't think we put this out to the public. We both had Mackenzie Hughes as well.
Yeah, okay, so I was like, I don't know when we talked about that, obviously sometime on Saturday night, but I was like literally laying in bed fading, and I was like, I really don't want to miss on this Mackenzie Hughes bet. Let me go see what number I can get, and I threw one in like as I was taking like my last waking breath for that night, and yeah, that was a real sweat, because that could have been a big boy.
Yeah, that was those. I mean, I ended up at like 150. I saw someone grabbed it like 350 before the books had adjusted. But for whatever reason, despite the fact that his ball striking had been on point in round 3, they were just giving him no credit whatsoever. Versus everyone else who was like even or even at +1. Like Woodland had like 150 odds. Hughes had like a 2-shot lead. I get Woodland's a better player, but at that sort of tournament, like anyone can kind of win, as we saw.
Yeah, that's the thing, especially there where, a lot of times on the PGA Tour, the closing stretch doesn't always have a lot of teeth. This one obviously does. And yeah, you can go 2 over and bring the whole field back into play. It was a perfect opportunity to go grab one of those -1 guys. And Mac Hughes almost made it happen.
Yeah, I mean, 50-foot putt, a chip in. Sometimes you need the breaks to go your way. I mean, he did shank that ball on 18 into the grandstands. I did enjoy when someone yelled in Fleetwood's backswing. I guess Fleetwood didn't hear it, so it didn't really matter. I got like 20 messages like, was that Feinberg? I was like, I can guarantee you that's not Jeff Feinberg. He has a bit more class than that.
I saw that Feinberg everyone assumed Feinberg was involved in everything. Did Mackenzie Hughes' ball hit Feinberg in the head? Was Feinberg yelling at Tommy Fleetwood? Like everyone just thought he would have his fingerprints somehow on the finish of that Honda Classic.
Well, we'll get Feinberg's recollection of his time at PGA National tomorrow on tomorrow's show. People, don't tweet me and be like, "Where's the Jeff show?" It's coming out tomorrow. You'll have it. We'll record it like 10 a.m. It'll be out by like noon, whatever it might be. But he was like talking to Mackenzie Hughes' mom walking down 18.
Yeah, how did he even find Mackenzie Hughes' mom? I gotta hear this story and figure out how this all panned out. But I guess you Canadians can find each other in a big crowd.
I maybe she was wearing like Mac Hughes gear. I mean, I feel like that person would be very easy to spot amongst the crowd. Like, oh, there's the one person. You must be his mom.
Yeah, that's probably a safe bet. Otherwise, I don't know how he found out. I'd be pretty impressed to hear.
I like to live in a world where Mac Hughes, big fan of the show, and like so much so, like a super fan, showed his mom, and then she recognized Jeff from the show. Feel like that's not going to be the case.
You know what? Let's not even ask Jeff about it. Let's just go with that as the working theory from now on. That's exactly what happened.
All right, so winners from last week. Sung Jae outrights, they were everywhere. It was the first real community win in a very long time. So here's some winners right here. We have Jayway94, Miles Martwick, DPAG013, Schuler, Joe Mulberg, not only hit that, won himself $600 on DraftKings as well. Ryan Ingalls, Alan Klutz is funnier. Chaz Fisher, Clint Ward, Jake Hahn with an impressive hit. John Foran, James Midgley, Joe Weaver, Chris Daniels, Jonathan Rouse, Sports Theory, Frank Lupani, Tom Young, Chris Nolan, director of Batman, I'm assuming, John Davison, and Tim Sherwork, who also turned $23 into $456 on DraftKings. Our boy Riku hit a winner for the third consecutive week for $6,000. But the big winner, Butter Pecan, had a $500 bet on Sung JM, good for $14,000. Impressive stuff. DraftKings, just as good last week. Good week, apparently. After everyone complained about, oh, this week is so tough, viewers of the Pat Mayo Experience seem to have no problems. Anthony won $566. Michael Cortsy turned 40 into 950. Justin Kexon turned 5 into 800. Josh, the Laser Show, turned 75 into 1,425. Greg Sherrill turned 190 into $8,500. Kent Bruton won over $1,100. And Wilburn turned 350 into just under $3,000. That is a fantastic week for everyone out there. Plus, I need to let you know that if you want to generate some lineups easy and do your research, 20% off if you go to fantasynational.com/PME. He'll hook you right up with all of that stuff. Takeaways from the DFS Open before anything, Rick. I think my biggest one is how good Reed Fowler is at golf.
Yeah, and not only like, okay, he plays good, but like his swing looks good too. You know, like he does it in a very like cool fashion. And yeah, he despite being up in Boston and not having access to, you know, courses year round, I guess maybe the many treks back to Hawaii allows him to practice year round. I don't know. His game is legit.
And the other big takeaway is when people like Rick, who lives in California, or Reed, who is from Hawaii, despite the fact that it's not very warm outside, when they offer you sunscreen, you should say yes, or else it looks like someone has tire tread marks over the side of your face. I'm basically molting my skin right now. It's not good. My wife is like, "You want some aloe?" And I was like, "No, I'll be fine." And then I woke up today and basically like I've shed 8 layers of skin.
Yeah, I tried. I seriously tried. I was like, Pat, come on, we're all doing it. Ben's involved. Like this, like, you know, I wasn't asking you to like snort a line or anything. It was just sunscreen, and you refused. And what people don't realize is you had this nice, you know, pink sweater for, you know, that you were wearing down there, and your face was essentially the same color throughout the week.
Yeah, I just wanted to blend in. I was going in pure like chameleon mode. I wanted to make sure my skin tone matched what I was wearing the entire time. So if I wanted to stand next to like some sort of White Claw ad, I would just blend right in and just like try to avoid people. Didn't really work out. The other big takeaway, and you'll be joining me next week for the players, as will Ben Raza. But we played golf with Raza. And as it turns out, so he had like 1,100, maybe it's better to get him to tell it, but he had like 1,100 or 15,000 steps for that day. And then he showed us the Fitbit and he had like 77 steps like 2 days before that.
Ben, the best comment is he said that, you know, his Fitbit is going to think it was stolen because no one has ever hit this amount of steps. That's like 3 years worth of steps in one day for Ben, who routinely averages like below 100 steps, which I don't even know how is possible.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll have to get maybe we'll have to do like an alternate show, not about golf, to really dig into like Ben's lifestyle. He's like, yeah, I was watching movies and playing poker all day. Like, sue me. I just didn't move.
It's fascinating. He said he watched Jingle all the way 3 straight times that day or something like that. Like it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, he did one thing where he said he watched that 3 times, then he watched the entire first season of The Wire. That was his day.
Ben was like the most fascinating character that we met down there. He lived up to all the hype. His golf game lived up to all the hype, and his life is living up to it.
I felt because you guys played together at the actual DFS Open, and like where we played, there was so much water on the course. There was like a lot of carry from your tee shot to the fairway. I looked out at the first hole and like I was dead to the world on like 7 o'clock on Saturday morning. The first thing I thought is like, Raza's not going to be able to get it over this water. That's not happening.
Yeah, luckily we had Reed, and then anytime that Reed would just, take care of the carry for us, Ben would just save us the time, and he wouldn't hit a tee shot. We would just go up to the fairway and start from there.
Hey, that's how you play speedy golf. Like that's really what you want to. If you know you're not going to be like the guy that we played with, Greg, he was hitting like 320 off the tee or so. He drove 4 greens, and I was like, I probably don't need to hit my drive here. Like I can only hit it half that distance, so we'll be good to go. And I'll be like in the woods. This will save me balls. I'll be good. I think we spent too much time on this. I'll recap with Feinberg because I'm sure his stories are like off the charts hilarious that I just have no idea about. But the PGA chat that people used to love so much shall be returning next week for the Players' Championship. I believe we're going to go around noon Eastern on Wednesdays. So Reed will be back. Now that I know that Reed's like awesome at golf, I can't give him too much shit about his bad picks anymore. So he not only just looks like Jason Day, he hits with like the same apex height as Jason Day, but he will be back. Wednesdays will now be allocated towards doing some golf chats with everyone. So let's talk about this week. Let's try to build some bankrolls because I know there's going to be awesome prize pools on DraftKings this week for the Arnold. Well, for the players, it's going to be huge. But for API, we're looking at a much better field than last week. But I went back and looked at like all the past winners. So the last 4 winners are all internationals. And it was Matt Every twice before that. The last time like a good American player won was Tiger, who's won this event 8 times, and he's not here. Does that skew you in any sort of way that we should be leaning international?
I don't think so. I mean, off the top of my, I don't know what the number is. What percentage of all tournaments do internationals win?
That I don't know.
I don't know.
I can assure you I do not have those numbers at my fingertips. But like the entire top 5 last year was all international.
Well, we kind of talked about this a little bit where the Florida swing is really the first time that a lot of these a lot of the guys on tour get a lot of wins. They're usually coming from places. I mean, even when they were out here at Genesis, there wasn't a breath of wind. Sony obviously kicked up, but that was weather. But the Florida swing is generally the first time that a lot of these guys get a club or a club and a half wins into them. And the Euro guys, the international guys who play on the European tour generally are dealing with that more on a weekly basis. So there is something where, okay, you play it once, you play it twice, you start to get used to making those wind adjustments that I think the American guys who play primarily on the PGA Tour struggle with. So I think there is something to that, and it might be why you see more internationals up here in the Florida swing leaderboards.
And I think that the very like cream of the crop type players too, like even this week, the international contingent seems to be at a higher level than the overall, like, I mean, there's a high quality of American players here, but all the best American players aren't here. And most of the top internationals tend to make this a stop. I think it's because so many of the international players make their home in Orlando for a tax haven that this is just like a home game to them. They can come over, they can get prepped for the players, maybe even play Valspar, and then it's on to the Masters, and they can go back overseas. Like, we're finally getting Stenson in the field for the first time this year.
Yeah, he has not played a lot of golf recently, but you're right. I mean, the top 3 guys on the DraftKings slate, they're internationals. Then you get a couple of Americans. It just does seem top heavy. So I would like to see what the average tournament, how often an international wins versus an American, and then how it compares to all of these events. But you're right. There seems to be a little bit of an international flavor.
Do you put any stock into this President's Cup thing that seems to be like a legitimate trend at this point? Like if you played in the President's Cup, like you're winning.
So yes and no. Like I do think that that international team was so well prepared and so well thought out. They probably should have won that President's Cup. But realistically, what you're looking at is you're looking at the best golfers on the planet. And I know that doesn't include Europe, but like the American President's Cup teams, those guys have been doing well. The international team, these are just like the top of the world's players outside of Europe. So it's like, yes, there's something to it. It's a little bit of a coincidence, but remember, these are all very good golfers.
So what you're saying is that we're guaranteed to see a Ben An or Abraham Answer win this week?
I hope so. I will financially benefit from especially a Benny An win. But yeah, I mean, it's an absolute lock until every single one of those guys on the international team wins. Who was the Chinese guy that I can't think of his name, who's at the bottom of the President's Cup team?
Oh, Hao Tong. He's playing overseas. He's in Oman this week.
I could not think of his name. Yeah, it's been a long week. Yeah, whole win in the next like 3 or 4 weeks.
Maybe Oman. Maybe we'll play some doubles with Haotong over in Oman and we'll be set. So the top of the pricing this week, Rory, who's won here before, stormed everyone, gained like 9 strokes putting in 1 round 2 years ago, is the highest priced player. He's also the number 1 player in the world, so that really checks out. He's 11-8. Fleetwood coming off a devastating second place finish at the Honda Classic, or third place finish, whatever it ended up being after putting it in the water on 18. He's 11,000. Hideki 10-6. Bryson 10-4, who has a runner-up at this event. And Xander, $10,000 on the dot. I went back and looked at this because I was really curious because I ran like the stats model. Xander rates out number 2. Basically, Rory is number 1 regardless of any sort of like range that you look at. But with Xander, I didn't realize how many strokes he had gained through approach at WGC Mexico. He gained over 10, which is like a ludicrous number. And he played like not well whatsoever. Like his putting has been atrocious. And then I was like, well, what has he done on Bermuda grass or done in Florida? Like the last time that he played in an event outside of the Players Championship in Florida was like 2017 at the Honda Classic. Like the guy never shows up in Florida. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a couple of thoughts about this. So first of all, the fact that Rory's 11,800, that's one of the highest prices that we've seen outside of a tour championship in the last year and a half or so. Justin Thomas, I think, was 12,000 at this year's Sony Open, which makes sense. But this is like a legit price, and I think it's completely well deserved. He's putting himself in contention every single week. He's dominated API. If I'm ever going to pay 11.8, it's right now. But the Xander stuff, Pat, is like, I'm all in on Xander. I already bet Xander. I will probably have a lot of him. If you pull up his round by round strokes gained, he is like for 1 or 2 rounds every single week, the best player in the field. And for 1 or 2 rounds in the week, like the worst player in the field. And it's usually via putting, which is, I'm happy to just say, okay, he's not going to lose 3 or 4 strokes in a single round every single week. And once he puts 4 rounds together, he's going to fill up his trophy case.
That is known, Rick, as the Ben Ann fallacy.
What's that? That the putting will eventually come around?
Yeah, that you say, like, he can't just lose 3 strokes putting in any given round. It turns out he can, like, lose more.
Yeah, that's true. But Xander is historically a much better putter than Ben An is. And it's just like, it's weird that he has these super ridiculous round by round splits, essentially. It's like a different guy shows up between the first round and the second round, and then the second round and the third round. And his finishes have still been like, okay, like 21st, 14th. He should have won the Tournament of Champions. Like, he's playing better than I think a lot of people want to believe he is.
Yeah, the results really mask how good the overlaying numbers actually are. Like, looking at it right now, one of the big things, like beyond approach and ball striking, all the normal stuff that we look at, 2 of the key things I really want to dial in on here is par 3 scoring on par 3s above 200 yards. There's a lot of long par 3s at Bay Hill, and proximity from beyond 200 yards, only because over 33% of approach shots come from that distance. Like, I talked about it at Riviera just a little bit, where you looked at the yardage and you're like, it's the same as WGC Mexico. That's weird. But everyone's driving every hole at WGC Mexico. Some of that is like elevation put in, but like the dog legs at Riviera really make it play longer than it actually is. Here, like, there's water in play on 8 holes, and they really do force you to take layups where you have all these really long approach shots coming in. So looking at Xander over the past 24 rounds, he's 6th in the field on those par 3s from 200 to 225, and 1st in proximity from beyond 200 yards. So I think ball striking wise, it sets up best for him, than even better than Rory, than any other player in this field. But I'm convinced he's going to end up like -7 putting in round 1.
Certainly possible. Now, it is an invitational, so he's not guaranteed 4 rounds, but a much better chance that he gets to play all 4. And if anything, you can get closer to a no-cut Xander is usually pretty good. But you're right. Okay, so I ran my little key stats model that I run, and there's only one course on the PGA Tour outside of Bay Hill where strokes gained off the tee is more important, and there's only 4 courses where strokes gained approach is more important. And Xander ranks in the top 7 of both of those categories in this field.
It's interesting what you said about Rory, how he's justified and deserving of that price. He's either wildly overpriced or he's underpriced and everyone else is wildly overpriced. I only say that because he's 5-1 to win this tournament. And the next closest guy is Tommy, who's 14-1 to win this tournament. And the DraftKings pricing doesn't really reflect that whatsoever. Like, either Fleetwood should be like where Xander is, or Rory should be like 13,000.
Yeah, so I'm trying to look back and see. So other times that pricing has gotten like 12,000 or 11.9. DJ last year at the Rocket Mortgage, I don't remember what he was 6-1 in that event. Sony Open for JT this year, he was like 5 or 6, I believe. So like I actually think he could be $12,000.
What do we do with the other three guys in between? You got Tommy, Hideki, and Bryson. Like, if we like Xander, we're probably not going to use those guys. I think there's a compelling case to be made for almost all of them, though.
I think the natural pivot is to Tommy Fleetwood, who, third place last week. If you would have written that in before the week started, everyone would have been super thrilled with it. But this is the perception versus reality thing where he's got a 2-shot lead at one point on Sunday. He needs to make birdie on 18. He hits one in the drink. It seems like a failure for Tommy, despite a really great finish. The fact that he's got, 2 top 10s in his last 3 years here at Bay Hill. Like, I think he's the natural pivot that goes overlooked.
I feel like people are going to pile onto Bryson.
For sure. Yeah, especially because the off the tee game is critical. He's been so good off the tee. He's been, again, he should have probably won WGC Mexico, and he played well at Genesis. I think Bryson sucks up a lot of the ownership in the top. I think Tommy's the pivot. I think Rory is the guy that you can spend up if you want, and I love Xander. So the only guy we haven't talked about is Hideki.
Yeah, and Hideki, I talked about how many strokes gained that Xander had at WGC Mexico. He had over 10. Second place was Hideki that week, the last time we saw him. Over the past 24 rounds of any player in this field, he's number 1 tee to green. And approach means way more than driving and around the green for this specific tournament. Like, you're going to need those too. It's not like, you can chip like Corey Connors and be like, no, I'm still going to end up at like 14 under. Like, no one's going to hit 100% of the greens in regulation. And Hideki rates out really well. When I construct my lineups together, and this is sort of a first look as we're talking through this on a Monday evening, that Hideki, I kind of want to gauge ownership on him, because if people see the stats that we saw on Xander, even though the results haven't been there, people might migrate towards him anyway. People will use Bryson. It does seem like Rory's going to be pretty popular. Instead of Tommy, it could be Hideki as the one that ends up going overlooked. It would feel like a toss-up between those two.
It could be, especially because Hideki doesn't have the course history that Tommy does. I mean, Hideki struggled a little bit here at Bay Hill. He had a 6th place 4 years ago, but I don't think he's cracked the top. Yeah, he hasn't cracked the top 33 since then. So it's not like a slam dunk course history type situation that you can go back to like Tommy has. So I think you're kind of on the right path there.
Even looking at it last year, though, T33 for Hideki, 11.6 strokes gained tee to green, lost over 8 putting.
That's the combo. That's literally what Hideki does. Yeah, it's so bad on the greens, but hey, ball striking is going to be important, and he does it better than almost anybody.
Hey, it's an interesting price point for him too, because like if I was going to spend 10.6 for him, why wouldn't I find? I mean, why wouldn't I find an extra 1,200 is a thing to say, but like just to get up to the safety of Rory.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the argument is finding 1,200 can be difficult depending on what your other guys are. It's not finding 200, but you're right. I mean, there's a case to be made for every single one of these guys over $10,000, and that's probably why they're priced here.
Like the difference in that pricing right now is like, do you want to take Victor Hovland? Let's say you built a lineup with him, like, oh, I want to get it from Rory to Hideki. So instead of Hideki Hovland, you end up with Rory and Matt Wallace or Rory Sabatini, someone like that.
So I'd actually probably be willing to find the 1,200 and go even lower because of the invitational situation, right? And more of these guys are going to make it through the cut. So I would probably just naturally lean towards going up and quote to use your words, find the extra $1,200 to get to Rory and sacrifice it on the other end.
And frankly, there's not a lot of discrepancy between even the Xanders and Hidekis in this 9K range, which has more inconsistent play, but a lot of really big names. So the first guy up is Adam Scott, $9,700, won 2 weeks ago. That's always fun. Sung Jae coming off the win at 95. Reed, Fowler, Brooks, Jason Day at 91, and Justin Rose at $9,000, who I find super intriguing this week. I placed a bet on him to win at 40-1. Now, I don't feel like the $9,000 price tag is necessarily like that seems fair for him. 40-1 seemed a bit deep, but he has been god awful. But Henrik Stenson historically plays really well at this course. And any place that Stenson plays well, Rose tends to play well too. And just even looking back at the results that Rose has at this tournament, they're pretty good over the years. 63rd last year, that sucks. 3rd, 13th, 9th, miscut 2nd, 15th. He's had a lot of success at Bay Hill in the past.
Yeah, so the way that I look at this, you're right. Rose and Stenson, both, awesome course history guys. Rose has 6 top 15 finishes in his last 8 at Bay Hill. And yes, he's been very bad on the PGA Tour, and his like measured stuff is bad, but he did also finish second at Singapore like 4 starts ago, the event that Kuchar won. It hasn't been all that bad. And I feel like at least for Justin Rose, we've seen signs of life out of him compared to someone like, I don't know, a Brooks Koepka, who this price tag is like kind of begging us to play. Like we've seen 0 signs of life from Brooks. I'd rather just get the $9,000 flat, spend it on Justin Rose.
Yeah, like Stenson, Day, and Rose and Brooks actually are probably the 4 trickiest people in the field to figure out and get a good sense of. Like I thought, and here's my galaxy brain move at work, I thought that no one would use Brooks last week. Like, oh, he's super expensive. He doesn't look good coming in. He says he has an injured knee. I'm going to use a ton of Brooks Koepka and really outsmart the field. And then it turned out he was popular and he sucked. So that really good combination for me. Like, would you use Brooks this week?
I love to be early on guys, but I feel like this is not the time. I mean, we've seen literally nothing. He lost another 4.5 strokes putting last week at the Honda, which is now the 3rd straight event in which he's lost strokes. Like I that should have been a slam dunk. Like that should have been a litmus test for him to be in his backyard at a place that he's had great success at. Like he's played enough golf that we shouldn't really be talking about knocking the rust off anymore. So either his game's not there or he's trying to figure something out. I'm not going to be early on Brooks. I will be late to the party.
So here's a weird thing. Just when I was looking through the past champions, so Jason Day and Mark Leishman have both won this tournament in the past 5 years. They've also both won at Torrey Pines over that span too. Do you think there's any correlation between these two places, or is it just like, hey, the same guys tend to play, it's mostly international guys?
Well, I think you can get both of these kind of firm and fast, and the rough is not going to be up here as much as it is as Torrey. I mean, Leishman, I actually do like Leishman this week. I got a little piece of him at 50 because, he kind of beat Torrey in a way you're not supposed to beat it, which is spray the ball all over the place and hit your irons to a couple feet and make every 10-footer for par and all that. You're not supposed to be able to beat Torrey like that. But this is a place he's won as well. I mean, he won it in 2017. He backed it up after that with a couple of good finishes. When you get yourself on a firm, fast track like this could be, and depending on how the wind kicks up, could be even more difficult. That can play kind of similar to Torrey. They're both kind of classic PGA Tour courses that bite back a little bit.
So would you be good with not using anyone in the $9,000 level, even including Rose, and just dropping to this $8,000 level where the names seem kind of similar?
Yeah, so it's weird. It's almost I love everyone in the 10K. I don't really love anybody in the 9. I love everyone in the 8. I don't really love anybody in the 7. So I might just try to go with those tiers. So yeah, I mean, there's concerns about every single one of these guys. Fowler in there. The 8K range is super juicy with a lot of guys that I like. So I could not blame you at all for skipping out entirely.
So the 8K, it leads off with Finau at $8,900. Then we go to Stenson, Ben Ann, Leishman, Fitzpatrick, who was good here last year, Morikawa, Bubba, Westwood, Hatton, and then Billy Ho and Victor Hovland at $8,000. I'm kind of with you, and maybe we're reading similar tea leaves when it comes to this, but I'm good with Stenson. I mean, he did win Hero, and he hasn't been playing that much, but he seems to have an affinity for this course. Morikawa just rates out so well that eventually, almost like Xander, he's not going to have a terrible putting week, and it's going to be really good for him. Just the ball striking has been immaculate so far in his young career. I like Hatton a lot. Like everything that I thought about the wrist injury with him at WGC Mexico, I mean, he gained in all 4 of the strokes gain metrics. And if we're going to go with an international, if it gets a bit windy, that's the type of tournament where I like Hatton. And then Bubba Watson's kind of calling my name a little bit. I don't think many people are going to use him, but if the Torrey thing correlates, he did lead the field in strokes gained tee to green that week. Everyone was on him at Riviera, and he sucked and missed the cut. Few people used him at Mexico. He was good for 1 round, and that was it for him. It just might be a nice spot for him to kind of figure it out here. And if the wind does die down, he's going to be great.
Yeah, it's off the tee is going to be critical, and that's what Bubba does. I have a difficult time figuring him out though, so I generally probably play less of him than most of the industry. I'm never all in on Bubba. I'm never all out on Bubba. I just never really have enough to consider it. But you're right. I mean this is stacked. Henrik Stenson. I love Benny On, who outside of his opening round 76 at the Honda, the final 3 rounds led the field in almost in like strokes gained tee to green, strokes gained total. Like he was absolutely awesome the final 3 days. And he's the exact type of player that I'm looking for. Even like a Lee Westwood here. Like I imagine Morikawa was probably like the chalkiest guy in this range, right?
I would think so, but I guess it depends on how you construct your lineups. Like if you want to use Rory, you would almost then have to go like Rory Morikawa if you're going to do it. And people don't like to do that. So they'll like jam in Ricky or something like that, then just go to the very bottom, knowing that at least 54% of the players are going to make the cut this week, that you can really get away with stars and scrubs if you want to. It just, I mean, I would have a hard time trying to project out a lot of people playing a lineup where it's one guy or one guy. Then if you do Rory and one of the 9K guys, or Benet, or Tony Finau. Like, there's a lot of guys that people enjoy to play in that range that you just physically cannot have the salary cap to get to Morikawa. That's the only way I could see the ownership being down, which he's probably going to be like at least 18%, like always.
Yeah, I feel like all the international guys in this range, and there's a lot of them, like are kind of natural pivots too. I mean, Matthew Fitzpatrick at 8,500 has played well here two out of the last 3 years, as you mentioned, and he's cooled off a little bit recently. There was a stretch of time where he was piling up, top 20s and top 15s all over the world like 2 months ago. He's cooled off a little bit since then, but when you go back and look at like historical strokes gained over the past couple of years, Fitzpatrick's name always seems to pop up at the top of Bay Hill.
Here's a guy for you, even $8,000. He was, let's see here. What was he? In GPPs, he was 23% owned last week. In cash games, 38% owned. And I just don't feel like anyone's going to use Billy Horschel.
So this is one of the things where I'm like, okay, if we liked him last week, we should probably like him this week again. Like, I don't think that much changes over the course of 1 week in golf, where if you're like, yeah, to your point, if that many people used him last week, he should be, again, popular this week. I know the fields can change. I know the courses change, but yeah, Billy Ho still playing well, still has multiple top 10s coming into this. He's a veteran. He's played here a lot. Like I tend to agree. He will be the one that everyone just, floods to last week. And then there's a mass exodus this week.
Yeah. And it's not like he played poorly at Honda. He was T42. It wasn't a great week, but he still gained off the tee. He gained through approach. He was like a net even putting, and he lost a few strokes around the green. He's made the cut basically every year at this tournament too.
And I'm pretty sure he was like T18 going into the final round or something, and he just kind of blew it all and, gave up all his gains. Yeah, he was 5 over 75 on Sunday, which makes that finishing position look a lot worse than it probably was.
Yeah, and just even looking at it right now, his putting was like pretty decent all throughout the week. His play on the longer par 3 is pretty decent throughout the week. Like he had a pretty good week.
Yeah, it was let's see, rounds 1 through 3 gained almost 6.5 strokes tee to green and lost a quarter of a stroke putting. That's like the exact profile of the guy that we would want. Sunday was really, really bad all around, but that was like for the first 3 days, I was like, oh, this Billy Ho stuff, this is working out.
And like in the 2 tournaments previous, when he had the back-to-back T9s, I think he gained an average of like 4.5 strokes putting over the course of those 2 tournaments. If you just give him 4.5 strokes putting last week, he's probably like top 10 again.
Yeah, probably true. I always love how he just sneaks up on everything. He's going to scare the hole one of these times with the way he steps into his putts. But yeah, and what we've seen from Billy is he's super streaky, right? So if this is, let's say, okay, so T9, and then 3 out of 4 rounds last week, you're talking about 11 of his last 12 rounds have been pretty good. I'm okay considering Billy Horschel moving forward.
So you mentioned you don't like very many people in the $7,000 area. Is there anyone that sticks out to you?
I think Scotty Scheffler at 7,700.
I have some bad news on Scheffler.
Uh-oh.
So it's a very, very small sample, but using Fantasy National, I sorted by fast and lightning greens, which these tend to be some of the fastest greens on tour annually, just year after year. So I looked at that. He's last in the field in putting on surfaces of that kind. I believe the sample is only 10. If you go to Bermuda and do the exact same thing and just add that to the fast plus lightning, he's actually even worse.
Oh, good. So last in one and worse in the other. Not ideal. So, I mean, you can talk me out of every single one of these guys. I don't really like anybody, but I mean, my reasoning for Scotty Scheffler was this. To start the swing season, he was piling up top 5s, piling up top 10s. He's exactly the type of player that we expected him to be. He hits a little bit of a rut around, farmers and waste management. But then in two of the most difficult, deepest fields that we've seen basically in recent memory. Genesis and WGC Mexico finishes 26th and 30th, and those are like legit top tier fields. And we know he makes a lot of birdies. He can get you going in DK scoring quite a bit. So that was my reasoning for backing him. But I can go wherever the wind goes in the 7K range.
Defending champion Francesco Molinari, who I heard on the broadcast, this is his biggest career win.
Yeah, that's so bad. He has like fallen off the face of the earth. Like it's so bad right now. I mean, the jokes on Twitter, like, oh, he died in Rays Creek. I was like, for the first couple months, I was like, yeah, that's funny or whatever. Now I'm like, no, that's true, because like he has not been the same. He's been so bad all over the world. I don't know how you could possibly like miscut 53rd out of like 70 at the WGC Mexico. It's just like not even remote signs of life coming from him. But
there's a whole bunch of like randos in this range too. Like Noren seems to be a pretty good price at $7,300. CH3 withdrew last week, but he has back-to-back top 20s at this event. His price is like normalized once again. Answer and Neiman have like the President's Cup bump. Like they might just win this week. So you have weird guys all mixed in, like Rafa Cabrera Bello. I don't really know what to make of him, but he was good at this tournament last year.
That's interesting. You know who I always find myself playing is Kevin Na, which is kind of crazy, but keep in mind Kevin Na's won like twice in his last 17-ish starts, something like that, 16 or 17 starts, which is kind of like a crazy stat to say. And I think as long as you understand what you're getting here, like, no, I do not think Kevin Na is a safe play. I would never play cash, but I would never play him in my cash lineup, or I would never play him to be like, oh, Kevin Na is like my safe guy in this lineup. Like, absolutely not. Like, he's the guy I plug in to increase my variance and increase my range of outcomes. And he actually like does win fairly often for that.
So the only other two guys, like you have your Damons and your Postins, they seem like kind of tread water type of picks, like if they putt well that week. Although Damon's pretty locked in with his irons at the moment. He tends to hit every fairway, which is always really nice. And he had the nice showing at Genesis. Poston was there until the weekend at Honda, and then just eventually few poor iron shots, and all of a sudden he was toast. But looking at it, Keegan kind of stands out if he can get back to like the ball striking, which seems to be coming back a little bit. Like he's guaranteed to lose strokes putting, but I mean, if Ben On's going to be $2,000 more, like they're kind of the same guy. At least in terms of relative price, at least you can sneak in Keegan that way. The other one outside, like Maverick McNeely hasn't missed a cut yet this year.
That's pretty impressive. I did not realize that. I mean, I know he played like the alternate events and stuff like that, but I did not realize he hadn't missed a cut. That's pretty impressive stuff. And that's not even, he doesn't have a house on the sixth fairway of every single one of these courses like he does at Pebble Beach. But I also think that Jason Kokrak here at 7,200 is kind of interesting. He's missed a handful of cuts in a row, but what he offers are a few things that if we're down in this range, we're looking for. Pretty good off the tee. He gains about a half a stroke off the tee per round. And then he's got some decent history at Bay Hill. 10th last year, 6th back in 2015, a 20th in 2016. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world. And we're getting down to like the bottom of the 7K range. There's some slim options.
Can we bite the bullet? Who was I just looking at here? Oh, do we just ride the form with Brennan Steele?
Man,
like Max Hama, like we can throw Max Hama into that bucket as well. Like there's a lot of these guys that they've been hot coming in. Although I did see when I look back at the past winners, like recent form, not great on like all the past champs coming in.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, Steele, I feel like he pops all the time and you can get a top 5 out of him, but like, I feel like you never get the back-to-back week. It's going to be like 2 missed cuts and then he's going to pop again and finish 4th somewhere. He's generally a California kid who likes to play on the West Coast, but obviously, shows up well and played well at the Honda last week. I would be pretty surprised to see him back up his performance last week with another one this week.
The last time he had back-to-back top 10s were the first like 2 events he played in 2017, Tournament of Champions, which is a 30-man field, and then he was 6th at the American Express 2 weeks later.
Yeah, doesn't tend to keep his successes going very long, it seems.
Yeah, it's a tough range, and like it leads me to believe that maybe the best construction that you can do, at least the contrarian lineup construction that you can do is use like the 9K guys and some 7K guys. That would be completely fading everything we've said, but like I can see a lot of people landing on the same stuff. Like this bottom of the range, like Gooch has been really good so far this year. I like Gooch a lot, but if everyone's gonna like kind of pile up on him at 7,000, which seems logical, like there's a way to use Rory, a 9K guy, or Rory and Xander, and use like 4 6K guys, and like you'd be fine.
Yeah, quite honestly, if you want to play the 9-7K ranges, you can pick anybody you want out of those ranges because you're going to end up with like an 80% total ownership over 6 guys or something like that, no matter who you play. So yeah, I mean, that would definitely be one way to differentiate yourself. And then you wouldn't have to make that many decisions between like fading a $9,200 guy and a $9,300 guy. Just play whoever you like the most.
So far in the 2019 season, Gooch has missed 1 cut, and it was at Greenbrier, the first event of the season.
So he's rattled off like 9 in a row or something like that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in a row.
Wow, he plays a ton then. Always a very good iron player. That's why I usually roster Gooch. And I personally believe there's only 4 courses where iron game is going to be more important. So you could get me back on the Gooch.
Can I get you onto a $6,900 player?
Yes. Wait, is he 69 or 68? You could have gotten me on 68 at Matthew Neesmith, but at 69, I would play Cam Champ and just take the absolute elite skill set of off the tee and hope that this is like the one every 18 or 19 tournaments where he can put kind of everything else together and find me like a top 15.
He's the guy. He's the guy I was going with. So you got the driving distance. You know you have that figured out. Unless he starts hitting it into the middle of the water, yeah, you're probably going to be pretty good off the tee. But over the past 24 rounds, he's also 3rd in proximity from beyond 200 yards. It might be less applicable to him because he hits it so far. But if he is forced into layups because of the water, he is really good from that distance. He's 16th in par 4, scoring 1st in driving distance, top 10 in opportunities gained on approaches. And when I did that similar stat of fast and lightning fast greens, he's inside the top 5, both overall and on Bermuda.
Oh, wow. That's interesting because like his wins are 2 at Safeway, I think, right?
No, one at Safeway, 1 at Sanderson.
Oh, okay. 1 at Sanderson, 1 at Safeway. But yeah, I mean, listen, there are not a lot of guys in every field, or especially down at this part of the field, that are multiple-time winners that are elite at one skill set and like very elite at that one skill set. So when I'm down here, that's the type of stuff that I'm looking for. I think he's missed the cut in his only trip here, but at least he's seen the course now one time. Like, yeah, I in 6,900, he's definitely my favorite.
I'm not super concerned about first-time players. Like, looking back at the top 10 last year, I believe there was 5 debutants at this course. Like, it didn't really make that much of a difference.
That's because you can play it on every video game for all of these people's entireties of their lives. It's everywhere. These guys know the course.
Yeah, I mean, Graham McDowell knows this course really well. I think he has a house on the property, him and Poulter. But I did look into Corey Connors as well. He lost strokes on, was it approach or driving? Now I can't get my facts right. I believe it was on drive. Yeah, minus 2.5 strokes gained approach at the Honda over 2 rounds. The first time he's lost more than 0.5 strokes on approach in 16 tournaments. And he had only lost 0.1 and 0.5. He lost 0.5 at the Rocket Mortgage, 0.1 at Sony, and he's been in the positives every time after that. And he's almost always in the positive off the tee. He's not like a bomber, but he's usually a bit more consistent than he was last week.
Yeah, no, off the tee and approach is Corey Connors' game. I mean, I think last year for the full year, he was top 20 or top 25 in both of those categories. I do like the regression back, or I guess it's positive regression back to how he normally hits his irons, but I'd still be a little bit concerned that even with that one bad week at Honda, like his results also haven't been that good outside of that, even when he has been hitting his irons a little bit better. 50th at the WGC Mexico, missed the cut at Genesis. So I'd be a little bit concerned. Long-term, I'm a Corey Connors guy, and that's the skill set I like. I'm just not stoked about it.
Harry Higgs at $6,700, who gains off the tee almost in every single tournament. And looking at his past 7 starts, he's really hit or miss when it comes to the irons. So he either loses, but when he gains, in the 3 that he's gained in his past 7, he's been over 3 strokes gained on approach in each of those events. So either he's bad with his irons or really, really good with his irons. And at this price point, like, you would take the inconsistency knowing that at least 54% of the players make the cut. And if he does pop, like, he could have a top-end finish.
Yeah, for sure. And he showed us that. I mean, played super well from that stretch of whatever it was to Pebble Beach, and then he took a couple of weeks off. But he's the statistical type of guy that we want. So the first 3 rounds at Honda last week, gained 5.5 strokes tee to green, lost 1.39 putting, and then he had the disastrous final round in which he lost 4.2 putting and 1.6 tee to green for nearly 6 total. So I like to throw out just that one bad round. Played awesome for 3 of them and played them in the way that we would absolutely want him to. So yes, he was in my core last week. I'll probably buy back in on Harry Higgs.
And it's tough to really gauge, especially a lot of the off the tee stuff and some approaches too from Honda, because water really throws a lot of it off. It's like looking at strokes gained at the Players year after year after year. Like some guys are just going to have objectively bad numbers because they put 2 in the drink.
Yeah, that's skews it quite a bit. So I don't know. I'd have to go back and check Harry Higgs' his shot tracker to see how bad it was, because you're right, if he kept it in play, it's even worse than if you just hit a couple in the water.
So you mentioned Neesmith at $6,800 per my modeling, short term 24 rounds. He's 8th in this field overall.
I'm not surprised. He has not had a finish worse than, I believe, 38th for like 8 straight starts. He continues to make a bunch of cuts. He's got like 4 top 20s in that stretch. He hits the ball well on approaches, gains nearly a half a shot there per round. He putts well. So like, I don't usually go for approach and putter specialist, but like, hey, sure, let's do it. He's playing really well, flying under the radar. Well, maybe not in our industry, but certainly amongst others, and he's only $6,800.
So like, but what about? Can you give me the Lanto under $7,000 rant? Because I think people need to be reminded every time he's below $7,000.
All right, I don't have it in front of me, but it's essentially when Lanto is under $7,000, he gains 10 times value in like 12 of the last 13 times he's been priced under 7,000. Just makes a bunch of birdies, always hot, or always capable of getting you a top 20, and he pays for himself like the vast majority of the time.
Yes, and usually with Lanto right away if it's going to go well or very poorly. Like at Waste Management, he was bad. And he just went away, didn't end up making the weekend. But like 9th at Pebble Beach, 37th at Genesis, like that's all it really takes. Like this particular style of tournament, like he was pretty good in Mexico too. He gained almost 6 strokes on approach in Mexico, lost almost 6 on the greens, but that's very atypical for him.
Yeah, and those are tough fields. Those are 2 very difficult fields. He puts up good showings, and when you're priced at $6,800, you would take a T37 or a T29, whatever it is. You're really not asking for much, and he continues to put himself in that position over and over again. He's very rarely a liability to your team.
So looking at it though, like Patrick Rogers rates out pretty well. He's played this course well in the past, and just he's rolling in. A lot of it is putting and short game, but he keeps consistently doing it. A lot like Maverick McNeely in a way. Like someone like Matt Jones can kind of jump off and jump back on. Same as Sung Kang, like they just kind of hit every few weeks. But there's real guys with like pedigree down in this range. Like Matt Wallace is $6,800. He was top 5 at this tournament last year. And I don't know what to do with him. Like, if you told me, hey, who's a better player, Matthew Neesmith or Matt Wallace, I would tell you it's Matt Wallace. But I'm kind of torn on the 2 this week.
So I certainly agree with that. And I can pull up Wallace's numbers, but like he has not been that good on the European Tour. He's down to 43rd ranked in the world, which I still get is awesome, but he has not finished inside the top 25 since the Portugal Masters, which would have probably been October-ish. So like 10 straight starts for him where he doesn't have a top 25 is not great.
Yeah, I hear that's not good. Like Willett is down in this range. Like we're not going to get peak Willett, but he had been trending for a while. And if he just gets back to the type of play that he's good at, this is a perfect spot for him.
And so the winning score here has generally been lower. I know like Rory went out and won it at like 18 under.
Like minus 13, minus 14, yes. That range.
Yeah, 13 under would win it like 9 of the last 12 years or something like that. So if the wind kicks up, if conditions get a little bit more difficult and it plays to that, as we talk about a lot, it becomes much more actionable.
Yeah, I feel like we need to start like pairing guys together. Like I really do like playing Rose and Stenson at the same place. Day and Chappell are 2 that you can put together who actually finished 1-2 in this tournament before. And maybe like Willett and Brennan Grace. Anytime that they're in a field, you might want to use them.
Yeah, that's fair. There's probably a bunch of those guys. Just, start easy. Okay, plug these 2 guys together and work from there. That's a little project I might have to work on. Good idea, Pat.
Yeah, you find the corollary courses, you find the corollary players. That all sounds like great stuff for you to be using and me not to look at it. I'll just ask you, you can tell me and inform us because I would just screw this up. But looking like down this list, outside of like $6,500 and below, there's no one really except for Doc Redman rates out the best, and he really broke my heart last week.
Well, I think he broke a lot of people's heart last week. But the thing is with Doc is legitimately, he is a very good off the tee and a very good approach player. He is absolutely horrible around the greens. He's absolutely horrible putting. So like you have to understand that going in, but his price keeps getting lower. He wasn't 7,300 last week. You might know what he was, but he's getting cheaper and cheaper, and the ball striking's still there.
I think I might, if you build those like super duper Rory lineups with another good player, like he's the logical, like him or Kevin Tway, who just gains on approach every week, but sucks for, I mean, it's putting reasons, but he used to be able to drive the ball really well, and he doesn't seem to be able to do that anymore.
Yeah, that's weird. So Doc Redman obviously only played 2 rounds last week, lost 3 tee to green, gained 3 putting. That's a little abnormal. I don't think that trend continues.
No, and it was really bad because I was like overexposed to him in my DraftKings lineup, but I also had him as first round leader. And I got really greedy. Like, I think he played the back 9 first. So he was going into 9. It's like, oh, if he birdies this, he's going to get a share of the lead. But I always play those top 5 each ways. And he was in the top 5 at -3 going into the final hole. I was like, just an easy birdie here, Doc. We'll get a split. I think you were 150 to 1. Catch the 50 to 1 after the split on first round leader. If not, I'll just get the each way move on the way. Bogey. And then he was like 9 over the next day.
Yeah, then he just ejected. He carried that over into the next day. Your guy Xinjun Zhang is down here.
Another guy who broke my heart last week. Connors, Redmond, and Zhang just like destroyed my week along with Brooks. The rest of the guys were pretty good. Like I had some really good looking 5 of 6s.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna have a sweat down there, and we were gonna be sweating some big cash. It ended up just being the Sung Jae bet, which was enough for a lot of people. But yeah, I thought we were gonna have a big one.
Here's a guy. Made the cut last week. Sneakily, what was this? T21 last week. Jimmy Walker.
Oh, God. Jimmy Walker's like, I'm going to say this and he's going to burn me. Jimmy Walker's not good. I don't really have much else of a take on that.
He's $6,400.
I'd rather play, I don't know, Pat Perez, who I feel like is still capable of like going deep at times. He was at once a prolific birdie maker. I mean, Jimmy Walker's 5 years removed from his best stuff, isn't he?
Oh, of course, but he's also $6,400 now.
Got it.
Like
a little bit different.
Pat Perez is a bit removed from him being good too.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, we're down in the bottom 6,000s. These guys, it's like it just depends how far removed from your best stuff you are. Are you like 18 months removed, or are you like 60 months removed? So yeah, these guys are all struggling with something. I mean, you could just end up playing if you got DK points for how often they called someone Arnold Palmer's grandson. You could roster Sam Saunders.
Oh yeah, that's going to be real fun on Golf Channel for the first 2 days. Then he'll miss the cut and everything will be okay. But Robbie Shelton, coming off a pretty good week, is down here. And then I guess we'll close it with this. Can you roster 2-time champ Matt Every?
Okay, no, probably not.
You say that, but people will, and I'm considering it. So I'm going to throw myself into that bucket too.
Okay, so that would mean then the assumption is that for a guy who routinely plays poor all over the world is going to just step foot in Orlando and be like, wow, I used to feel good here 5 years ago, and I'm going to play well.
He has not played well at this event the past 2 years.
Right. Like it was a 2-year stretch. I think it was 5 years ago and 6 years ago he won it, right?
Yeah, 14 and 15.
Yeah, 14 and 15. And he hasn't really played good golf really much else recently or anywhere else recently. So I would just rather go get Zhang I'd rather get anybody else at 6,300.
Well, I can tell you right now, I'm going to open this up, the early ownership projections. I always like to look at this just a little bit. Hopefully they're up to date. Yeah, they're up to date to currently while we're talking. But like when people go to fantasy, and this is all based off Fantasy National, like who people are starring and like making their favorites. But it's the same thing that I do. Like at the beginning of the week, I'll just kind of go through it. We'll talk. I'll do my research, and I'll just put stars next to a whole bunch of guys' names who pique my interest, and then I'll remove them from the list later on. So when you look at it on a Monday, the people who are doing like their initial scan of everything just kind of star players as they go along. So I can tell you the favorite percentage, and this doesn't correlate with anything. Rory, by far, number 1. 70% of people who have put like favorites next to people's names have included Rory. After that, it's Ann, then Stenson, then Bryson, Leishman, Morikawa.
Oh, I'm so glad you didn't say every there. That kind of makes sense. I'm surprised about Leishman, I guess. I thought maybe he would fly under the radar a little bit more, but maybe it's because he's a past champion. But the rest of those guys make almost total sense.
Now, none of this really correlates towards some of it does correlate towards some ownership, but obviously it's so early in the week that it's just it's a good way to gauge where like the initial wave comes in, because, you know, you'll do your stuff, I'll do my stuff, everyone else in the industry who we just met on the weekend are going to do their stuff, and that will like swing popularity. There'll be some sort of consensus that builds, and of course you probably want to fade that guy unless it's Sung J M from last week.
Yeah, apparently. Kevin Chappell is $6,200. I'd rather play him than Matt Every. He's got better course history or tournament history than Every does in the last 4 years. He's got a second and a seventh, and they both make just about as many cuts worldwide. And hey, Chappell shot like a 59 at some point at Greenbrier. Like, I'd much rather play that guy.
Was it Greenbrier he shot the 59?
I thought so, because Greenbrier like always gives up 59s. I think that course has given up 2 or 3 59s. So I thought it was.
He finished T47 that week.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, he was bad after that. I'm like now I'm almost positive it was Greenbrier.
Oh, you know what you can do? I would like to see some sort of correlation between anyone who shoots 61, 60, or 59 and what their scores are the next day. Because I feel like there's a huge advantage in playing like a head-to-head or a two-ball against those guys blindly, regardless of who they're playing.
Okay, I did something like this because somebody wanted to. Somebody always said, when Keegan shoots X, Y, and Z, they never followed up with anything, and it ends up being like, of course you can't follow up like a 61 with a 62, like that doesn't generally happen. But like Keegan was basically, the difference between his shots was his 2 rounds was basically the same as Rory's was, like when he goes low and stuff like that. So I'll find out for you, but that could be an opportunity for a head-to-head thing.
Is this the first show we've ever got through without being like, Tony Finau is great, you should use him?
Well, now we didn't.
I was just looking through all the guys' names. I was like, I just kind of spaced that Finau. He's $8,900. Like, when was outside of a major? When was the last time Finau was that low?
I could tell you, it's not often. Yeah, he's usually in the 9s, and the way that his style of play bodes well for DraftKings scoring. It's the streaks, it's the birdie stuff. He's gonna make bogeys, that's fine, but he usually outperforms himself on the DraftKings scoring side of it.
8 consecutive measured events for Finau, gaining basically an average of a stroke and a half to 2 strokes around the green. He's really improved that part of his game.
Yeah, and last week was the first time in a while that he has not like finished in the top 20, I think.
Yeah, so he finished 51st at Genesis. Before that, 2nd in Phoenix, 6th at Farmers, 14th at American Express, 10th at Hero. So it was a string of 5 events. So maybe I'm curious. I don't think he's going to be super. I always think that about Finau, and then it turns out everyone has him. It's like Xander and Morikawa every single week. It's like, they're definitely going to be like super low owned. Who could ever like them? It's like, oh no, everyone likes them every week.
Yeah, so he's $8,900. The last time he was that cheap, so he was 65 at the Hero. That's not right. But he was the Tour Championship, that doesn't count. BMW Championship of last year, he would have been 8,500. But now you're talking shorter field events where that pricing gets super soft. So yeah, very rare to get him at this number.
If you start your teams with Xander, you could use Finau and like Leishman. I think that's an interesting build this week.
I don't hate it.
Like,
it's really early on Monday, but I don't hate that.
Like, it's tough because, like you said, like we've seen not necessarily like long shots win this event, but like kind of that range of guy, like the 20-1 to 40-1 guy, play really well at this tournament in the past. That like the overwhelming favorite. Even the year that Rory won, I don't think he was the favorite because he was coming in like playing kind of poorly.
And there's a bunch of guys in that range. When I opened up the odds, it was like 1 million guys between like 40 and 50. And I was like, I love all these guys. This is great. I'm going to bet them all. So yeah, I got no problem stocking up on a bunch of them.
I'm trying to see here. Yeah, coming into his win at the Arnold Palmer Invitational 2 years ago, Rory was miscut at Pebble, 20th at Genesis, 59th at Honda, miscut at the Valspar win.
Yeah, the best in the world can snap off and win like no matter what their form is, which is kind of why I'm like, if I still think Justin Rose is a top 15 player in the world, he can look like the best player in the world despite having struggles recently. Like, that's my optimism.
Well, that's why I like the 40-1 bet on him. I think there's more value than him at 9,000. Now I might just do both, but I'm in on the 40.
Yeah, I might have to get in on the 40 if I can get that number too, because he's certainly capable of flipping a switch. Like you mentioned, I mean, Rory's obviously a different class of golfer, but we're talking about top tier players that flip the switch.
I mean, 14 months ago, Justin Rose was the number 1 player in the world. Now, maybe his career is Luke Donalding, or Luke McDonald, as they referred to him at the Honda Classic, but I don't think it's going to be that way yet.
No, I don't think so. I mean, he's been so good for so long. I would be very surprised to see him fall off a cliff. I think it'll be a more gradual decline towards, I mean, he's kind of older, more gradual decline towards his out of his prime years.
So there you go. Use Rose, use Stenson, be on your way.
It works for me. I love it.
All right. Rick. Oh, I should let everyone know out there, if you hit the description of this video or podcast, you can find the link to the PME DraftKings Open. Play in that. As always, we'll fill it up. But what do you got going on at dfsondemand.com right now?
Yeah, just a lot of stuff. You got tools, you've got all that good stuff. Rick Run Good YouTube channel, Rick Run Good Twitter, CBS Sports podcast. I'm basically everywhere these days.
Everywhere. You're like a fantasy jub. You're everywhere you want to be. For me,
that's right.
At the PME, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully, I'll have regenerated skin by then, and that will be good for me. FantasyNational.com/PME. Get you 20% off. Highly recommend that you go do that. And the giveaways, the $100 giveaway, the subbing to the show, the reviewing, and then the smashy of the like button for the video. Boom. $100 giveaway, $20 giveaway. Winners announced every single Monday. I'll be back on Tuesday with Jeffrey Feinberg. Until then, I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience! Experience!